All right, everyone, we're going to get started with the AcuCongress presentation. And also, I know we're almost there. We can all see the finish line. So I'll just ask if, again, everyone can just remember to keep their masks up. Just a couple more hours to go.
Hello, everybody.
Can you hear that? They said hello.
It sounded honestly like it was on a Doppler radar screen. So it came through me. Hello. Like that. Okay. They can hear me though. Yeah?
Yes.
Wonderful. Blake, can you tell me if Dr. Michelle Lau is in the room?
Yes. Yes, she's standing here right now.
Wonderful. I was going to ask her to stand. And I can't see the rest of the room, so I don't know exactly where to look. But anyway, I'm going to just say this. There is, in the history of the time that I've been working on acupuncture-specific legislation, there has never been anyone more important in this field than Dr. Michelle Lau. So every single one of you needs to turn and give a deep bow of gratitude because she has been tirelessly working to get federal acupuncture legislation passed. So if you guys would take a moment and applaud Dr. Lau's efforts, that would be great. Excellent. I think the next thing is we're waiting, I believe, on Congresswoman Chu's Legislative Director, Ellen Hamilton. She'll be joining us at 2 o'clock. Blake.
Yes.
Are you standing at the podium? This is the strangest.
Yes, I am.
I need to be able to see your face.
Okay.
If
I
possible.
can fix that.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry, he's like a security blanket for me. I think I'm just going to have to deal with the fact that I feedback a little bit, and that's okay. Sorry, guys. Technological difficulties are always the thing that drive me batty. So I guess it's good to just get that out of the way so I can shake off whatever. I'm kidding. I don't have nerves anymore. That's not how that works. So, so I do want to mention something before Ellen comes on. First of all, I've been working with Ellen Hamilton for a very long time, and years ago, when my husband passed away, I promised her that I wouldn't go anywhere if she wouldn't go anywhere. So she's still here, and I'm still here, trying to get this job done, and that's what we're going to be committed to doing. That is really, really feeding back for me, Blake. I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
I'll intermittently just mute myself, and that will probably help.
That'll work. That works fine. Okay. So next slide, really quickly. So all of you who are here, you signed up for the Atlantic Symposium. You may not have signed up to take part in AcuCongress. And we will get to a place where we'll have some instructions for you as well. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. Even if this is not something that you're interested in, I actually am hoping to get everybody interested, whether they are a licensed acupuncturist, a student, or a supplier to this industry, or just a fan of acupuncture. We need all hands on deck. So the goal for everyone in this industry, no matter what, right now, is the same marching orders that we were given by our federal acupuncture champion, and that is 100 co-sponsors in the 117th Congress. So is that this year? No, you have a 2-year congressional period, but we want to lay as much of the lattice work in this federal fly-in as we possibly can. So the goal stays the same. And actually, I think the goal is to get everyone on board with co-sponsorship, or on the Senate side to actually run a companion bill We want as much outreach as possible. We want you building a community. And we want to make sure that this isn't a one-off, that we continue to do this and learn, just like you see in other industries that have come together. It's not just their numbers. It is their numbers as unified action that counts. And they really do take it quite seriously. The advocacy piece of their professional lives is significant. It is significant. You will find that they are almost always very, very active in federal legislation and state scopes of practice as well. So, Blake, I need you to fill in for me for 2 seconds because I realize I left my phone somewhere else and I want to make sure that Ellen is not trying to text me. So what I'd like for you to do is talk about those social determinants of health that you were speaking of.
Yeah, you got it. I also do advocacy work for the naturopathic physician groups, and we just had our fly-in 2 weeks ago. It is the first fly-in that they've ever done virtually, and it was also an asynchronous type of event, so not all of the meetings happen on a single day. And what we were asking is for a simple report from the Government Accountability Office, and what has been going on the Hill and through every single one of these congressional offices is a discussion around the social determinants of health. One of the biggest social determinants is obviously socioeconomic status, right? Socioeconomic status, racial and ethnic disparities, et cetera. And what we did a few years ago is we brought on the House Caucus for Integrative Health and Wellness. And one of the most recent ones that was built is the Social Determinants of Health Caucus. So everyone who is on the House side is now hearing all about the social determinants of health. And one of the ways, again, that this ties into what our ask is those who are underserved, those who are under-resourced receive Medicare benefits. Because that goes through Medicare, it goes through Medicaid, it goes through CHIP, which is the Childhood Health Insurance Plan. And so when you are, as we go into developing your message later on and then over the next few weeks, be thinking about also, this buzzword is on the Hill, and this is what many of the staffers are going to be looking to hear about before they want to sign on to a healthcare bill that may not play into the topic of social determinants of health. So over the next few weeks, be thinking about how when you go back into your practice, which patients who are Medicare or Medicaid benefit recipients who are not able to come and see you. Be thinking about what population would be able to start seeing you, would be benefiting from your care if this bill does get passed. Because that's what they're going to want to hear and be sold on for their specific congressional district. Is that what you wanted to hear, Callie?
That is. So,
Great.
And I'll just piggyback on that. So I was right. She was trying to text me. So she's coming shortly. I'll piggyback on what he was just saying. And that is how do social determinants of health fit into what we're trying to do with Medicare? Specifically, you're dealing with disability stats. Remember that Medicare is not just an aging population, but also a vulnerable population. So we've got people on disability who are receiving benefits from CMS for that reason alone. And we know from just a recent conference with I'm For Us, which is the integrative medicine for the underserved, at their conference, that they embrace acupuncture and acupuncturists and are looking for ways to incorporate them into rural health clinics and underserved populations nationwide. So I don't want to get overcomplicated in our message, but because we're going to give you a lot of latitude in terms of how you want to present, we just want to add something to that. There's some things that you can be looking for. She'll be here in 4 minutes. She's going to be prompt. That's how that goes. I'm going to just introduce you guys. I'm sure most of you know who Ellen Hamilton is. She is Congresswoman Judy Chu's legislative director. She started out as the Health LA when I was working with her years ago. So congratulations to her for moving up into the position that she's in. And she recently ended up with her master's in public policy. So another congratulations to Ms. Hamilton on that. There's probably not one single staffer on the Hill who knows more about acupuncture than Ellen Hamilton, who is now here. Ellen, I was just bragging about you.
Oh, hello.
So Ellen has been working with acupuncturists for, Ellen, how long are we talking now?
Since about 2014.
Okay. Very good. And so what I wanted you to do, because we'll unpack all the bill, details. We don't have to do anything like that.
Okay.
But you and I talk all the time. When you and Congresswoman Chu spoke to Michelle Lau and their group recently, you put forth the goal of 100 co-sponsors, be it for stripping the bill into a larger Medicare expansion bill, or if you were just trying to garner enough attention to ever get a hearing on its own, you would need that number. And so that's sort of the slide that I've presented here, the yellow being where we have some representation for AcuCongress, but also the red and the blue are our Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce targets. So our hard targets, especially from health committees. What I wanted you to talk about today, because you're always kind of, I think that you end up with this scenario a lot, and that is people who are acupuncturists don't really understand that there's still a need to educate members of Congress, that they don't even know about acupuncture. So if you would speak a little bit to the crowd about that.
Sure.
Well, okay. Then we won't even do this. Here's what I need. So how many times do you think that you've encountered when people ask you, what is the biggest obstacle to getting people to co-sponsor this bill? I mean, I've heard you say it about 1,000 times. It is that you guys are doing this all by yourself. That, right now the industry has largely been absent in getting materials together, getting it out there, getting the education to different congressional staff members. And that's really the missing piece, right? That we need to shepherd this bill, correct? And then tell people what acupuncture is still.
Yes. So I think it's tricky because obviously, when you're leading a bill, you want to educate folks in your colleagues and sort of say why a piece of legislation is effective and why it matters. That being said, there are at this point in the congressional season, so we are 11 months into the Congress that started in January of 2021, we're nearly 6,000 bills have been introduced. To give you a sense of scope and scale for how far and how many different options there are. What really helps staff members and what really helps folks learn about a bill is hearing directly from their constituents or directly from people who you may not live in a congressional district, maybe you live in the next one over, but you work in there, because everyone knows district lines don't pay attention to sort of how people live their lives. So, you might be one district over, but you work in another member's district. So talking to them about the work that you do and the work that you provide and why that type of work would be beneficial or would be benefited by a legislation. I think in Congress, exactly, Callie, you mentioned the issue of education is high. I will say that when I have conversations with other members, with other staff members of, my boss is leading such and such a bill, would expand access to acupuncture and the Medicare program, I still get responses that are, acupuncture? Isn't that just fake? Doesn't it just, isn't that just magic? Like, that is the level that many, many people, and not from any sort of ill intent. It's not malicious. This all comes from a place of people truly not understanding, the gains acupuncture has made, especially in the United States, especially in the past 40 years. It really comes from a place of lack of knowledge. So the education piece of I can't go talk to every single member office every single day about this is what acupuncture does. Here are the NIH-backed studies that support acupuncture. Here is why CMS has decided to cover acupuncture for chronic lower back pain. That's an incredible talking point. That's sort of the work that is incredibly helpful when other members, when constituents can do a lot of that for their offices.
That's right. That's right. I don't know how many times that and obviously I had a career that wasn't acupuncture oriented for a very long time. And it doesn't matter what the industry is. At the end of the day, it is up to the profession to do the shepherding of the legislation that is going to affect their profession. And so it is not enough to just hire a lobbyist. You actually have to have some grassroots movement. You have to have a connection to each other, if nothing else, enough to organize and help this, who is the only federal champion on Capitol Hill for acupuncture, help them pass this bill, or to be able to strip it. That's on us, not on the person who introduced the bill. And I think that's actually a mistake that a lot of people make in thinking that they just hand it off to you, you introduce it, and it's all on congressional staff to make it happen. It's not.
I'll also just add, Callie, what you had was a good point, is this is not specific to acupuncture. There's plenty of meetings that I take every day from constituents or constituencies, groups who come to me with a brand new medical technology or a new way of delivering care in some way, because I handle healthcare for my boss. That is very, very common. And it's, not expected that I know every single device that has been approved by the FDA this year, so people come and say, hey, we'd like to explain to you this method of treatment, why it matters, who it benefits, and why this piece of legislation would be beneficial for advancing the health and wellness of your constituents. So that's a very, very normal thing that happens every day.
Well, and so I wanted to say, it's not, yes, she handles healthcare, and there probably was a time when most of our congressional offices had full staffs with very specific legislative aid purposes. That is not necessarily the case anymore. So Ellen is handling a variety of things as a legislative director that are not healthcare related. So I want people to start thinking of the way that we pass legislation this way. Think of the bill as the storefront, if you want to. And that is what this member of Congress has done. They've created this beautiful storefront. And I want you to see the rest of yourselves as the door-to-door salesmen who are there to push this beautiful display and get people to come and see it and sign on board. So it behooves us to recognize what our little worker bee positions are, because again, lots of people, may have watched K Street, I don't know, The West Wing. That's a lot of the times the only exposure that they have to policy. And if that's the case, they may think that all you do is write a check and hire a lobbyist, and then it just magically happens. Or that there's some nefarious set of things that go on. And there are examples of that. But by and large, this is a very regulated industry. And you don't have to pay more money in order to move things faster. What you have to do is have a groundswell of constituent-based activists who are willing to get involved and make sure that you shepherd that beautiful storefront legislation from start to finish. And finish is passage with a presidential sign-off. So we've not gotten close before, but I would say to you that we have a real sense of something different this time. And I do feel like, Ellen, that you're going to have more help than you've had in the past. And so I'm hopeful that we can get lots and lots done in December during this fly-in. Couple questions on this bill, and this just actually came to me from somebody who couldn't make it here. But once again, it seems to me that there is some confusion about whether it's not even whether or not there's an opt-out anymore. You remember that 6-month discussion that we continued to have? Now, I think there is some rumor somewhere that if this bill is passed, that they will not be able to do anything other than opt in. And I keep saying, no, you don't have to take part in this. So maybe if you could just clarify that little piece, kind of the opt-in language, or what that means, what I'm talking about, and the fact that they could opt out too if they were there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we have constructed this legislation is to make acupuncturist providers under the Medicare program. To do that, we amended the statute to add licensed acupuncturists in along a number of other providers. So acupuncturists would have all of the same rights and privileges to participate in the program or not as nurse practitioners, as I believe I don't have the actual language on in front of me, but definitely nurses. It's really sort of any non-physician provider. This is where licensed acupuncturists would be listed in. So just like any other provider can participate in the Medicare program or not, so could acupuncture.
Right.
Acupuncturists.
Right.
Yeah.
So can acupuncturists.
Correct.
The current guidelines, the way they're written, it's very clear that they're talking about licensed acupuncturist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and I don't know if you could share, even if you did know, but because I have, some contacts in other places, I've been trying to tell people that, we won't be the only people trying to affect CMS on those regulatory guidelines regarding acupuncture. Pretty much anybody who's got dry needling in scope or, whatever's happening in their state licensing situation, they're going to be looking to affect CMS guidelines down the road. But this statute in particular doesn't have anything to do with anything other than we are trying to be recognized as a provider group. This is not just about a statement of acupuncture, that this is truly about recognizing who we are as licensed acupuncturists and being able to have that autonomy in order to do our treatments and not have to have whatever appropriate supervision is, and that we can bill them directly. And that's going to decrease the burden for our 65 and up population who might have providers they love, but then they have to bill things on their own if they even could. And it will increase access to this medicine across the board as practiced by the experts in the field. So there's no shortage of people, by the way, guys, that are trying to affect CMS guidelines regarding reimbursement for acupuncture.
I think my only addition to that is that this is the first step. So there's a lot of things that come after, rate of reimbursement, how, in which settings, for which conditions. None of that can happen unless licensed acupuncturists are recognized providers under Medicare. So there's lots of other things that we would love to do, but we need to make sure that licensed acupuncturists can be recognized as providers, and then all of those other fights can kind of fall into place. Because without that, you're not getting reimbursed at all. So,
let's say it again for the people in the back. I need you guys to hear this. This is the Cornerstone Movement. Okay. This is honestly just the key that opens the door to everything else. It's not like the legislative battles won't end. It's just that without this one, I guess you can consider it like the vitamin D of everything. It's going to unlock everything, right? If we don't do this, and it is very possible that CMS could be influenced by other practitioner groups regarding CMS guidelines. I have no doubt that it will be that situation. And we have not become a recognized provider in the same manner that the nurse practitioner, well, I'm not even them, the physical therapists, the chiropractors, those who are seeking dry needling in scope, state by state, they're going to definitely get to a place where they're going to find a way to get reimbursed for it as well. So we have to be recognized moving forward. And I don't care if you don't want to be a part of the Medicare system. Don't. That's fine. But for the rest of us, we need the capability of being a part of that system. And so for those who don't want to be a part of what they consider to be a broken system, you don't have to be. But this is modern medicine, mainstream US medicine, and this is what is going to increase opportunities for our practitioners to be able to not only do their jobs, get reimbursed, but also take part in programs that are going to help them pay off their student loans and increase access and visibility of this medicine in general. So
I think my other point to that is because CMS has recognized acupuncture, our main argument is the people trained in acupuncture should be the ones performing it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That being said, it's still recognized. So it just means that if acupuncturists are not Medicare providers, then people are going to get it. They're going to get dry needling elsewhere.
That's exactly right. And that's honestly what's been the fear all along. If you guys don't know, it's nail biting half the time when we're dealing with this legislation. Over the last few years, I think that this office has done a really phenomenal job of getting everything from the language into the Support Act, which was a true act of acrobatics once it hit the Senate side. You are now currently in a situation in which we do stand pretty close because for the first time we've got a regulator who is covering acupuncture. So that's why we were never really all that close before. Now we are. And so the race then becomes to make sure that we are recognized as the experts in the field before this becomes a situation where our medicine is so watered down and performed by people who only studied for 80 to 300, 400 hours, that it changes the way that our medicine looks entirely just because we weren't the ones with our foot in the door when it was first implemented. So
I'll also add the national coverage determination by CMS. They went as far as they can under law. They did as much as they could under current law in order to do more, in order to allow acupuncturists to provide these services and get directly reimbursed. You need a new law, and that is what Congresswoman Chu's bill does.
That's exactly right. So it takes an act of Congress. Yeah,
it literally takes an act of Congress. But that is, I think I've definitely had questions from acupuncturists before that say, well, why didn't CMS just, say it needs to be covered by us? It's because they don't believe that they can without congressional intervention.
Well, and they can't. We're not defined. Right. So it's really that simple. Nothing gets by Congress or nothing gets implemented. Nothing gets off the just written word. Concepts don't fly unless they have a legal definition. And that's what we're seeking here, is to be defined within the SSA. Right? Yeah. Chiropractors have all kinds of things that apply to them. Under physician inside of the Social Security Act, they are actually rendered to specifically spinal manipulation. As licensed acupuncturist, we're not seeking that physician status. That's going to make it a little easier for them to not be on the AMA's radar with restrictions that they want to put in place. So this is the first step, guys. We're gonna have this, and just so you know, Ellen, we're gonna keep having this conversation at AcuCongress until we get this legislation passed. And so, our first attempt is December 8th. We're hoping that we train the industry in a large enough fashion that no matter who's doing the fly-in, that these techniques can be used and the message can be as unified as possible. So
I would, on that sort of repeat conversation point, I think that's important because the timescale for passing legislation is not a single year or a single Congress. Like I said, I've been working on acupuncture issues with Congresswoman Chu since 2014. The bill has changed a couple times. We've changed our focus based on who's in power, who's the majority party, what our different options are. Timescales are measured in sort of a decade is about to move legislation, especially to move legislation the way that you want it, takes a very long time. I think some examples for what is currently happening in Congress, just to kind of set your mind to where things are. In the reconciliation bill being discussed right now, there's a bunch of different provisions on maternal mortality and maternal health. Those provisions were originally introduced in the early 2000s. So,
Wow.
and they've changed. They've changed as data has come to the forefront. There's new information on the maternal mortality crisis, the paid leave discussion that we've been having for 30 years. So I think it even the little things can take a really long time. And so I want to emphasize that that doesn't mean that things are going poorly. That doesn't mean that progress isn't being made. If we set a goal of 100 co-sponsors and get 57 this year, that's still incredible progress. That means there's 56 more offices that know about this issue and that will want to support us again next year. So I think that's just an important thing where, I've been speaking to advocates since I've been in the Congresswoman's office in 2012. They come back year after year after year and gain more and more support each year.
That's right. That's right. As we keep telling you guys, this is not a one-off. But the larger bill, I think this iteration might be year 7. But again, the things that have changed are on the regulator side, which is what makes it that much more exciting for this particular bill to be out. And this, by the way, guys, is the first iteration of this bill. So what we're going to do is at AcuCongress, the goal is to keep you excited, to keep you motivated, because not everybody has the stamina that, say, a congressional staff member who's been working on something for decades. And we do that as a lobbyist. I can tell you that it's good to diversify, because otherwise it's a long, slow slog to getting things done the way that you want them to. And I will tell you that you want a federal government that moves a little slower than a state government, because if they get it wrong, you have some time to fix it. And that's also why we want our bills to be as vague as they are, because you don't need anything mandated that you may have to come back and change, and then it would take 10 years to do it again. So we want to get this right. And I think that we have on this one. Because we're doing this by Zoom, I can't see this audience, but Blake can. And while we have Ellen for the very brief time that we have her, I just want to know if there's any questions from the audience that they would like to ask of Ellen.
Jason is on the run right now.
Great.
All right, we'll
We have
see.
Amy first.
Okay.
Ellen, so is there anything, this is Amy Major from Massachusetts. Hi, thank you. I want to thank you for your persistence. I want to thank you for your continued support of us, of the bill, but in meeting with us. And I want to thank Callie for making that happen, so we can learn from you, because the closer we get to the source, the easier it is for us to become united. And it's so valuable for us to hear from health legislative aid. Is there anything we are not doing that you could recommend that we do so we can be effective?
That's a good question. Apologies for choosing my words very carefully. It is against ethics rules for us to actively help lobby. So,
This is true, guys. She can't actually tell us how to do this.
So I'm going to defer to Callie on that question.
Yeah. And I will take that. And that's typically in any time that she and I've spoken together. If that comes up, then we know that that's a tag team moment where I'll handle that. So yeah, it is against ethical rules. There are questions that I would love to ask Ellen if I thought she could answer them, but she can't. So and that's good. You want ethical politicians and staff members too. So are there any other, outside of them like giving us the keys to the kingdom?
Ask any questions you want, and if I can't answer, I will defer them to Callie.
That's right. And I can answer them. So as soon as she's not on this call, I'll get into the bones of that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? And thank you, Amy, for that call, or for that.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Kimberly Coleman. I'm from DC. And I was wondering if, I know this line is going to be virtual, but is there anything being in the DC area that I could do to help support?
Well, I mean, you're a constituent of Eleanor Norton Holmes. Did I get Norton Holmes, or is it Holmes Norton? Oh, that's what I thought. I knew I was going to mess that one up. Who is lovely, and she signed on to, I think, she signed on to the bill prior to this when we were running the veterans bill. So we are going to put together different means of outreach for people. And obviously in DC, we would ask you to still work that constituent base. There's nothing really.
I would say this could actually apply to everyone, is obviously the fly-in is you're meeting with the legislative staff. And those are the people who you do want to meet with, just in terms of, they're the ones who handle legislation. The district staff, the folks in your area, are going to be more helping with casework. That being said, if you can't get a meeting with the folks in DC, take a meeting with the folks in your area. They will pass it along. I hear from, my counterpart in Pasadena all the time about, hey, I met with this hospital and they had XYZ to say, and then they will put us in touch. So I think that's sort of the takeaway of this. I don't think there's anything specific you can do in DC, but if you can't get a meeting with her Capitol staff, if she has, staff in her like DC city office, definitely meet with them.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, Ellen, if that was something that you could speak about, and you may not be able to, but obviously when we want sustainable influence campaigns, we want them to go ahead and meet with their district representatives or their staff members there, because it's not always just going to be about federal legislation. You want that relationship to be sown in district. But the question is this: how often? Because mostly when I'm dealing with the district, you said casework. It's also campaign stuff that a lot of people are dealing with, and that is not something that you're ever going to be mixing with your federal legislative aides. And so, but how often do you get contacted by somebody who is working in the district in order to arrange meetings or to say that they met with a constituent or anything like that? Does that happen very often? Or
yes, it does.
Okay.
It does happen often. I think each office operates a little differently. What you guys will find about Congress is we have 435 independent, basically small
Human
businesses. Yeah. But for the most part, if you meet with folks in the district office, so not the DC office, they're probably just going to refer you back to the DC folks, because their jobs are different than ours. They're not responsible for tracking legislation. They're not responsible for adding co-sponsors. That's not what they do. Their jobs are to be the representatives sort of face in the district. So they have different responsibilities. So it happens a lot because sometimes they'll be in a meeting about something completely unrelated, and then someone will say, "Oh, can you sign on to this bill?" And my counterpart will say, "Here's Ellen's email. Please go talk to her."
Right. Right.
So there's plenty of overlap, but if you want to talk about legislation, typically, and I'm speaking in generalities here, the district staff is not responsible for legislation. That's what the DC staff is for. That's right.
Which is why we say, when we give you homework about district stuff, Ellen, you're in your district right now, aren't you?
No, I'm in DC.
You're in DC. So, but were they into the district last week, or is it this week?
Oh, the members?
Yeah.
The members are in their districts this week.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So when we say we want you reaching out to district staff, that is about a relationship, period. When we're talking about federal work, we're talking about issues. So that is, and they're definitely going to be, that's the legislative issue that we'll stick to, but we still want you having a relationship, if you can develop one with your district staff members. We think that's a good idea, just so you have that relationship. And then this person and her counterparts and her colleagues are the ones that are truly the single most important people that we want to meet with. Not necessarily that it's not important to meet with your legislator. It's just that these are the staff members that they rely upon to do all of the digging and the research. And because while they may not be expected to know everything, legislators certainly cannot be expected to know everything about everything. And so these staff members are our targets, our hard targets. So
we do have another question.
Go ahead.
This is Megan Gale. I just moved from Western Tennessee to San Diego. So I don't know my members that have been in San Diego yet. We've only been there for a couple of days, and we're also part of the military. We're also part of the military family. And I was wondering, this might be a simple question, but when I go to contact my representative's office, what is the most polite way to address them? Is it representative, congressman, not Mr. or Mrs., right?
Each person does it a little bit differently. Typically, representative is a safe, gender-neutral option. Congressman or congresswoman, I've heard congressperson. Senator is conveniently gender-neutral in its own, just like representative. Some representatives, if they have doctorates, like to be referred to as doctor. So it really just depends. I think, if you're saying an email or whatever and saying like Representative Chu, I think that's perfectly fine. And folks, will not look at you funny if you say it like that.
This is true. This is true. And when you're writing to them, we do address them as the honorable, whether they are or not. No, I'm kidding. Of course they are.
Or just representative. Again,
Yes.
we get plenty of things just addressed to like Representative so-and-so.
Right.
Great.
That's right.
That is their title.
Blake, is there anything else?
Seeing no more questions.
Okay. So Ellen, I guess the main thing that I want you to know, and one of the things that we had talked, and you may already know this already because you probably talked to Michelle, but we have been, we met with Young Kim and out of the 39th and Michelle Steele out of the 48th, who I believe as two Republican women out of California said that they would get together and look into co-sponsoring this bill. So we're hopeful that there can be a Republican from this group. And then our goal is to tackle all the ones that we had for prior, everybody on Ways and Means, everybody on Energy and Commerce, and then everybody else when we're done with all of that.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's great. We'd love a Republican. And the strange good thing about not having a lot of co-sponsors right now is that no one's scared off.
Right.
So would love it.
Good. Well, and as I told the group yesterday, I had asked Ellen Scott, she actually does a whole lot of work getting, I think she goes above and beyond, quite frankly. But so she has a list of people that she was going to reach out to anyway. It's just that everything in the past has been staunchly Democrat, and we know the value of coming in from a bipartisan place. And so if we can deliver this Republican, we've already met with Walorski's office, we've still got Vern Buchanan's office, and then Congresswoman Kim and Congresswoman Steele. And I think Michelle would like to reach out to Doug LaMoffa as well. We will start turning our attention towards the other targets so that before we even get to December 8th, maybe we've got more added. At this point, Blake and I are considering this 24/7 priority until December 8th. So we're available to you if anything changes. I don't anticipate that anything will with the language. So it is our job to pick up where you have left off and see what we can do about getting this movement this session. So
yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you guys.
You can I'll give you a call when I get back home. Okay.
I
And
can go.
We'll talk about progress. So I'll talk
Kicking
to you
me off.
soon.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys. Bye.
Thanks, Ellen. Bye. All right. So for those of you who've never met Ellen Hamilton, she truly is one of the, nobody knows more about acupuncture legislation on the Hill than Ellen does. And she really is also somebody who works tirelessly, and she's a joy to work with. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Blake, if you can go ahead and pull up the presentation. Amy Major, I'm going to try and get into answering some of your questions. Or
Can you
that question.
re-allow screen sharing? Since we
Oh,
switched
it's
hosts.
me.
It's you.
Yes. Hang
Thanks.
on.
And Callie, so we did have one more question from.
Oh no, I'm going to make you
someone-
host. Sorry.
Yeah, make me host and I can take over that. So there was a comment that we had said this week the members are in their districts.
Right.
Just clarifying, that does not mean we are asking for support this week necessarily.
No. No. No, as a matter of fact, we do want you to reach out to people while they're in their district, but that is just for you guys. That is to develop a relationship. I really think that if more people thought it was interesting or worthwhile to get to know the people who govern them, that they would be a little more on fire about this and a little less apathetic and a little less angry, actually, is usually what they are about politics. So yeah, this week it's just while they're in their districts, for those of you who feel like it, try and see if they have a town hall or a coffee. They often get together with constituents for coffee. They certainly do it while they're on the Hill, so I can't imagine that they don't do it while they're at home. Okay, so you guys heard 100 co-sponsors. Here's the plan. And I didn't take that off, the importance of research. It is important, just so we're clear. But that's the wrong language. So I started with base camp, training and teams. So training is going to happen there all the time. And that's the only place that we're going to be for that. But we want to continue this AcuCongress team-based relationship building. And so the way that we build this community is we have a place to work together. And so base camp is going to be that place for that. I've put Congress Plus twice. Once because it is our outreach tool. We are going to construct the messaging that will go out to schedule all of your meetings. And actually, Blake put in those who just were signed up through the Atlantic Symposium. We've loaded you up, and we're going to give you an idea of what it looks like in Congress Plus too. So the second thing that I put Congress Plus for is this is your communication tool. I know that there are other organizations and they're using things that use bots, like you can text the word acupuncture in, or you can do whatever you can through texting. That is an excellent way to reach out. And I believe that Blake's experience recently in using that method resulted in getting a response from Blumenauer's office, right? Okay, so that's a wonderful way of doing it. And obviously our Congress Plus outreach is going to give a form letter approach to that, but that's kind of where it ends. At that point, what we do is we create the materials for you to take part in a fly-in, and then we create the written materials so that you can follow up with them. There's the all-important phone outreach that comes afterwards, because this is, I don't want people thinking that, you sit down, you do your pitch, you ask what you ask, and then suddenly they just sign. It doesn't work that way. You do have to follow up. So the virtual federal fly-in, that's your influence. That's the day that you are going to be wielding as much influence as you possibly can. So you want to hammer your the construction of those meetings. Even though we are giving you a lot of leeway, we do want you to take this and practice it and get it together and run with it, so that when those things that will happen, like nerves kicking in, or technological difficulties, or mainly nerves. I'm not going to lie. Nerves are a big deal when it's in person, but I've noticed that it's still a big deal when you're on a Zoom call too. So when that kicks in, we want you deep trained so that you can just kick into high gear no matter what. And then the last thing that you've got, and that's the green light there, follow up, follow through. And that is your sustainable influence. We want you following up after, maybe a week later. We want you to follow through until you get that co-sponsorship or that champion in the Senate. Okay, so it is equally important to be excited and have that energy for the day, but it is also important to recognize that this is where advocacy fatigue sets in. People, they want to write one check, they want to make one phone call, they want to do one fly-in, because it's hard. and it takes a lot of time. Sorry, couldn't help myself. It is hard. It is. Passing legislation is hard, right? If it was easy, anybody would do it. It's not easy. And it takes a ton of dedication, and it takes a lot of inspiration, and it takes a lot of communication. More than anything, the most important thing that it takes is this sense of community. And so, I mean, just I had a conversation yesterday with somebody. We were talking about how I do name tags. No, I don't put your credentials on there. Why? Because when we sit down to the table here, we are family. And I don't need to call my grandmother doctor anything. And you don't need to call me by the plethora of credentials that I have. In fact, if I put my credentials up just like a lot of you, that's all I'd have room for on your name tag. So the goal is to make you feel like family, maybe family that you like even, you know. We want to see you talking to each other. We want you building this community together. And we want you to recognize that this is not a one-off, that, as Ellen stated, there's lots that has to be done afterwards, but this is the first thing. And guys, if we don't do this one thing, then all those other things that need to be accomplished simply won't. They will not be accomplished. And so, and anybody who's telling you differently is lying to you. So don't fall for it. You have to pick up the reins and be responsible for the advocacy of your industry. It will not fall to whomever has the most money. It does not fall to whoever is the largest organization. It doesn't matter who you think is right or who is wrong. It falls to every single one of us to join together and create this world. Otherwise, this is not going to be open to us. Not in this way. Not in medicine, anyway. You will hang a shingle and you can wield that medicine however you'd like. However, it will not be a part of mainstream medicine, and it will not be performed by us for when it is mainstreamed, and it will be. It is completely going to be. So I do not want to see a world in which the only people performing services of acupuncture and being reimbursed for it in a mainstream setting are coming from those who are not the experts in the field. 400 hours is not enough to understand the beauty of this medicine. It isn't enough to wield it and be reimbursed for it, apparently, right? But that's not what we want to see. So follow up, follow through, and that's your sustainable influence. Next slide, please. All right, just a reiteration, Basecamp is where we have these teams home bases, and we're going to keep those going for as long as there is a need for AcuCongress to operate. That is where you're going to communicate. It's easier for me to communicate than to get, everything goes, my notifications come to me through email anyway, but I stay in Basecamp because I have 74,000 plus unread emails, and that is because I would rather work in Basecamp. It's all right there. Anybody who needs a tutorial on that, we'll have those up and posted soon. I think they're up there already. Let's see. This is just the research list. Again, we're going to put that up in Basecamp. There's a lot that we're going to still be loading up, and I apologize for the delay, guys. I did not anticipate having to spend another 6 days in the hospital. So I am a little behind, but I'm not so behind that we can't, we're going to be, I'm excited. This is that time period where Blake and I get to kick this into high gear, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Next slide, please. Okay, Congress Plus. Now, this is going to be fuzzy to you guys, but you'll have the presentation so you can scroll in when you want to. There are things that I see when we load up in Congress Plus, and there are things that are different that you're going to see when you get what I'm putting app in. It's parenthetical. So the reason being, it's not really an app. It's still, you go to congressplus.com. And we have a link for you to do that. And then you just put in your email address and you're in for that particular day. So you don't have to download anything. You don't have to have software that's additional to what's going on. You basically either, you just go to their website and you're in. What I see when we look at this, I have two things. One says attendees and highlighted, that's to the right, and you'll see what they're showing me. They show me how many meetings that you have, how many meetings based on, by the way, your addresses. We're going to go back in and add your work addresses in. And so many of you may have up to 4 meetings because your Senate will stay the same, but you would have district meetings that were in the place that you work and vote and the place that you influence, which is where you work. So if you do not want to be a part of Congress Plus, or you don't want to be a part of the AcuCongress Fly-in, and you don't want to hear from me, just send me a message and let me know that, because we will communicate via email and texting as we get closer. And Congress Plus, it'll just come through that. And then on the left-hand side, I see that we had 70 attendees so far, because we haven't uploaded anything other than this group. And then we already have 97 meetings that we need to schedule already. So if you start thinking about the sheer volume of that, now obviously that's not going to be 97 co-sponsors on a piece of House legislation, because we've got our Senate meetings that are in there. But regardless, if we were to get every single House rep that we've got just currently scheduled, we would be way ahead of the game. Way ahead of the game. So I want you guys also, what I see is a lot of one-offs. So it's just you in that meeting. Please get a patient to come with you. It's really important, since you've got that 15, 20 minutes with that legislator. If you understood the power of a patient testimonial to be able to move somebody, there's just nothing that's better than that, honestly. So if you are in a meeting where you're the only person in that district, know this. First of all, we won't make you do it by yourself. If you need me in there, or you need Blake, or so whomever, we will find somebody, a state captain, somebody that will be in there with you, but also bring a patient, mainly because there's strength in numbers, and that's who they want to hear from. All right, next slide, please. The asks. Okay, so the asks are a little different than the messaging, right? And we want to lead with our asks. And it's 2 separate asks, because one is specific to the House of Representatives and one is specific to the Senate. And so the asks are very simple. On the House side, we want you to ask them to co-sponsor HR 4803. That's it. Just co-sponsor it. And it's such a simple ask that I do anticipate not a whole lot of problems on this. We'll get to the message in a minute, but that ask is cemented. That is the ask for AcuCongress. We are asking the House representatives to co-sponsor HR 4803. On the Senate side, and I've got a couple of things that I need to put together, because Jason has been chomping at the bit to get it over to Cory Booker or Bob Menendez. And we are going to be asking for a Senate companion bill. And a companion bill simply means they're going to take the language and, Blake was bringing up the difference between a companion and a mirror bill. Mirror is very obvious. You can tell what that is. But it's actually not accurate too. If we're talking about mirror images, it would almost be the same but the opposite. So companion bills are what we're looking for, and that is that we want them not even to change any of the language. We just want we want the Senate companion bill to be reflective of whatever committee it would go through as to whether or not any language needs to be changed. But in looking at it, I think it would be just fine. So on the House,
I'm also
we are asking
watching
Go
time,
ahead.
Callie. We probably only have like maybe up to 5 minutes. And then we have a question. So new to all this, what do you mean when you say ask a patient to come with you? Is this on Zoom, or what's the structure of that?
Well, we haven't got there yet. So
Yeah, great.
keep going.
So we're going to skip past the next one.
So the
and
message
go-
we've already done, right? Everybody understands that this is about trying to get to, now you see, you've thrown me off. Like, you know
Sorry.
better than this. So the message is that opioids are covered and acupuncture is covered, but licensed acupuncturists are not. Okay, that is where we begin. And then we've got a bunch of other things that are going to happen. For those of you who have not been a part of any of the training sessions to date, we have them all up on YouTube. Feel free to look at them. But for now, we're going to skip past this part. Okay, very, very easily. I'm going to let Blake take this one.
So I'm just going to talk around how the meetings actually go. Can raise of hands who has actually ever had a meeting with one of their congressional staff members? Great. So you kind of can reflect back on this. But what we have been seeing with these virtual fly-ins is you get a little bit more time in general than you would if you were on the Hill itself, but that does not mean you get to talk ad nauseum. And so when we say brief intros, we really do mean brief intros. It's a 2-sentence introduction to who you are, why you're here, and what you do and what you bring to that congressional district as a constituent. So that's going to be your personal introduction. And then you also want to open the door and say, what is your familiarity with acupuncture as a medical field? What's your familiarity with our profession? That then actually allows you to have a dynamic relationship whenever you're in the Zoom meeting room with your staffer or the member of Congress. And so those are going to be the 2 pieces of the introduction, and that you need to think of as 5 minutes. We've talked a little bit about roles in previous trainings, and we've talked about the timekeeper and content manager and the district leader. Your timekeeper is going to be who is going, you will be tapping on them to make sure that you are not overstepping your bounds on some of this. When you go into the ask itself, this is why we had also said, if you're the only person in a meeting, and Congress Plus will show you if you are the only person in there, make sure to bring somebody else in so that they can read the room and see what that reaction of that congressional staff member is looking like. And if they, twitched at something you said, or if they've, gotten the glazed eyed look that I'm sure a lot of you are feeling right now toward the end of this. So making sure that as you're delivering the ask, reading your room, and figuring out, sussing out like where will you actually need to give them some of that follow through. And then finally, as you move toward wrap up, do you have any additional questions? This is one of the most powerful things that you can then put the ball in their field, I think is the analogy. Because say that again.
In court.
Court.
Put the ball in their
sports. And so if you then hand it over to them, you're challenging them to make sure that, did you hear what I said? Can you give me a little bit of reflective listening? And can you also tell me how I can help you to move forward together? So asking for additional questions and what their follow-up preferences are. The last 2 fly-ins that I've done virtually, one was appropriations and one they were trying to pass the infrastructure bill. And so they just had their, committee voting schedule released that morning. Everything gets crazy. And so then they're like, we need at least 2 weeks to begin even starting to review what you've given us. So making sure that you actually set up a timeline and follow through with that timeline that they ask for. Any questions on like what the day of process, anything like that? Sweet.
So yes, I do want to address that. So yes.
So this will all be online. So this will be in Zoom. Yep. And so we're going to go into that right next here in a moment about how we're going to be able to access that. Kelly, do you want to talk on Congress Plus?
Well, yeah, I mean, so essentially what you're seeing here is when we send you the link for the app, just so you guys are clear, you'll see that little sign in right there. You put in your email address that you registered with, and it's going to bring up the little thing that says, hello, Blake, select from the options. Now, I've done some mock meetings for Blake right here. What you're going to see when you get in, if your meetings have been scheduled, and the reason that I've done some different ones is just so you guys can understand our process. In one of these meetings, you see something full, Blumenauer. It's got a registration link, which is a Zoom link. And so that's going to tell you exactly how you're going to take that meeting. That if we were doing in-person fly-ins, you would actually be on the Hill, and we would give you an office to go to and instructions for where to meet with either your legislator or congressional staff member. And we would give you all of that information and have the ability to make changes to that. So you want to frequently check your app for updates. I also put in here one in which the time has been determined, but we're still waiting. They want to use their technology, so we're waiting on that information. That doesn't mean that you're, fully scheduled yet. It just means that we're waiting for the best way for you to hook up and with that particular office. And the last one that I did, I think it's actually the top one, where I confirmed that there would be a meeting, but we have no time on that. It's still confirmed because we do have a confirmation on a meeting, but we don't know anything else. And so you can see the difference in what information you're getting. If you also look over here, it says agenda, it says maps. You don't need any maps for your Zoom calls. It's got best practices up there. We can also upload things. You're going to have access to your talking points in each of those meetings. And actually, that would still be in the virtual federal fly-in agenda. You would typically have any materials that are there that you can click on. They'll be at your fingertips. So the answer to the person's question who asked if this was virtual, yes, it's all completely virtual. You can do this from the comfort of your office or from your living room. When we say bring a patient, we simply mean that you're not having to pay for them to take part in this fly-in, that they're going to accompany you and be there for testimonial purposes. We don't want them in base camp because that would be overwhelming for them, and we want to keep them as friends and family of acupuncture. And so we're using their testimonials to move our congressional staff members and members of Congress, but they don't need to have a consistent presence on base camp in order to build this community together. So by bringing a patient, you actually get a discount to take part, although if you are here, that was all included anyway in the price of coming here. So don't worry about that. For those people who are not here and you're getting this particular session afterwards, you still would need to register for the fly-in, and you get a discount if you bring a patient. So we encourage you to do that. Next slide, please. Oh, we're done with that. Keep going. Okay. So honestly, the reason we kept it short today is because I'm going to continue to teach. We will continue to do this every Tuesday, the way that we had prior to this. And we gave some homework the last time of people reaching out in their districts. I would like to reiterate that they're in their districts this week. It's Tuesday. Make a phone call when you get back home and just see if you can reach out to your congressional representative in their districts. We also have, Blake, did we decide we wanted to give them homework for anything else, or we want to wait until next week?
I think we should communicate that through Basecamp. So be on the lookout on Basecamp. We do have some research homework pieces that we will be requesting for you to do by Thanksgiving. And
right.
we do have
and here's hang on. Here's the deadline, guys. I will not accept anybody else in this fly-in after, what is it, the Wednesday, 2 weeks prior to December 8th. So that's the day before Thanksgiving, right? Wednesday, the 24th. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so go home, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, tell your patients, tell everyone and we are going to put this out to you. There will be a registration link for the fly-in. We're not charging a great deal for this for those who are wanting to be a part of it afterwards. We do have to charge because we get charged for it. So we want as many people as possible to try and move the needle on this. You know, I work with New York, the Acupuncture Society of New York, sent a lot of people here, but they also have the potential to add 27 co-sponsors to this. And so that's something we're going to be working on really, really hard. If you are a state association member out there, and I haven't heard from every single member of your advocacy committees, get on it. we need all hands on deck. You as state association members who've signed collaborative agreements with the Atlantic Symposium, you also have a collaborative agreement with AcuCongress, meaning we'll train your members for free. And we have said that from the beginning. And we are more than happy to sit down, both Blake and I, and do special training sessions for free with your members if you have a collaborative agreement with the Atlantic Symposium. So they have until the 24th, Wednesday the 24th, to sign up to be a part of this. Because after that, we will be 2 weeks out and it's going to be very busy. So
We have one question and then
go for it.
This is Michael Fox. A quick question. When we're
Hi.
choosing to come with us, we have a choice of patients. Do you want someone eligible for Medicare, 65 and older, disabled, or just anybody with a good story?
So I believe, if I heard you correctly, Michael, because I know you're in the back, you are asking me if the patient that you want brought to the fly-in is 65 and up versus just any patient, right? I go back and forth on this. I think that you need to judge who is going to speak eloquently. I really think at this point, because as Ellen said, you still have to educate members of Congress on what acupuncture can do. So the goal, in my opinion, is to find any patient who can move that needle by showing how effective it's been for them. Because in a lot of ways, most people are approaching acupuncture from a disability position. And so I don't really care. Blake, do you think it matters if they're a certain demographic? I want you guys to pick a patient that you can work with, that will follow instructions pretty well, is very eloquent, and passionate about what this does for them. So you have some choices there.
okay, I think for time purposes, we'll need to take any follow-up onto Basecamp. So thank you all
This is
so
as
much.
good as I get today, guys. This is it. After this, there's no, it's all sweatpants from here on out. So, and I am going to try and make it down so I can say goodbye to people. I'm not walking very well at this point. So, if I don't see you, and this has been the strangest meeting in the world for me because I feel so far removed from it. I haven't been able to see y'all's faces, and I do a lot of my work based on whether or not we can actually inspire people to do this. I love what I do. I love it. I think that Blake loves what he does too, or if not, he fixes it really well, which makes him just a great boyfriend too. So I'm kidding, guys. Everybody knows that, right? But he's far too young for me. I'm gay, but beside the point. So I really wish for this industry, if I had one wish out there, it is that they, and I'm just going to address the elephant in the room really quickly, stop fighting with each other. There is no right or wrong way to do this. The only wrong thing at this juncture is just to not get it done. And so if you are, no matter what your opinions are, especially if you are what we call an old guard member, which means you did not spend 6 figures in student loans to get your education. If you don't understand the nature of what is going on with our colleagues right now with regards to them being able to make a living, and you're still adamant that this is not the avenue that's going to work for us, I don't know that we can work together, because at the end of the day, acupuncture is already covered, okay? Licensed acupuncturist or not. And if I have to die trying, this is the goal, is to make sure that that particular law changes. So that's kind of it for me today. I'll try and make it down. If I can't, it was so lovely to work with all of you. Jason and I will reconvene. Jason, if you'll zoom me in for closing comments, or I'll try and make it down there for that. Thank you so much, everybody, for traveling and being here. It's incredible. I'm so grateful for you. So, all right. Good luck to Amy Major and Jen Broadwell on their upcoming. And also, I believe if we still have Susan Vellaber and Matthew Weitzman. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.